Welcome to today's WebEx. We're going to focus on frailty, but it's got an inherent theme behind it around building, understanding, empathy, and the skills to support self-care, which is really a core theme that should run throughout everything that we do in the NHS and the care system. So today's WebEx is really quite exciting. Those of you who've heard Dawn speak before with us find Dawn quite motivating. So I think by the end of this hour, you'll feel really inspired to go and make a change where you are. And then just to introduce Dawn, so Dawn did a WebEx with us probably about 3 months ago now, 2 or 3 months ago. And her bit was just so inspiring over the work that they have been doing. We felt it merited some airtime on its own, and today's WebEx is that opportunity. So, Dawn, I'd like to welcome you to the WebEx and ask you to introduce yourself as to who you are and what you do, and then bring us through your presentation, and we'll come back for discussions at the end. So welcome, Dawn.
Thank you very much, Bev, and thanks very much indeed for that very kind introduction. So yes, my name's Dawn Moody, and I'm a GP with special interest in the care of older people. And I'm really talking to you today in my capacity as the clinical director for a workforce development programme that we've been working on in Nottinghamshire, which is all about working with health and care professionals to develop their skills in supporting people with frailty to self-care. So it's a project that we've been working on since last summer. It's been a really exciting and interesting project, and there's a lot of elements in there that really relate to this tremendous document that many of you will have seen from the British Geriatrics Society, which is called Fit for Frailty. And it's all about how we can improve the services that we offer for older people with frailty. And one of the very important themes within that guidance is around workforce development and training. The BGS documents are all openly available through the British Geriatrics Society website, so if you haven't seen them, I'd really recommend to have a look at those. But that's really the underlying basis for the programme that we've been working on. And as I say, I'm really delighted to have been invited back to share some of that with you today. Bev mentioned earlier, or I think Sandra mentioned earlier, if you are tweeting, tweet away. There's a couple of little things down in the corner there. So the things really that I'd like to talk to you about in this session is to think about some of the approaches that we've been trying to use to try and, as I say, to help us to understand frailty better, and to help us to be able to work more effectively with our people that we're caring for within our professional lives, but also I think a lot of us with the family and friends that we might have are also living in with frailty. So it's a very personal issue for a lot of us as well as something that we're encountering in our everyday work lives. So the aims of this session and the things that I'd like to talk to you about is, first of all, to talk a little bit about this thing called the Frailty Fulcrum, which is a tool that we've developed for to try and support the holistic assessment and understanding really of frailty. Then to talk a little bit about how we've been using virtual reality to build empathy for older people living with frailty. And then to talk, as I say, about those two things, to learn about the impact of a county-wide programme that's been a multi-agency and multi-professional training programme and toolkit for care professionals who are working with older people. I'm going to talk to you probably for about 30 to 40 minutes so that there's lots of time for discussion at the end. So as sort of Bev and Sandra have said already, if you have got questions, obviously hold on to those. It'll be great to have a good discussion at the end. So the first thing really to put this in context is to think a little bit about the importance of supported self-care for people who are living with frailty. And obviously in order to really think about that, we need to just recap a little bit what is frailty. We talk about it a lot, well I do, but lots of other people do too, but it really is a very important issue for us in terms of the work that we do throughout our health and care services, and really delivering safe, effective and consistent care to people with frailty is a significant challenge, not just for the NHS and not just for this year, but for all of us with our health and care services, with our wider public services for this year and for the future really. So Frailty, as you know, we're probably everybody who's joined in today has joined in because they're interested in this topic and very well appreciate that although frailty is related to ageing, it is different from ageing, and although, again, it's related to comorbidity and disability, isn't the same as those things, and very often it's more than the sum of their parts. And it's this state of reduced resilience and increased vulnerability where things that might have been a relatively minor events in a non-frail person can trigger these disproportionate adverse outcomes in health or well-being or in functional ability. And what is self-care? Well, we all know what self-care is, and we all sort of understand that concept, but sometimes in the context of, if you like, the thinking about it in terms of this type of work and the work that we're doing with people is really thinking about the components of self-care and what they look like and the different times that they're important and the different ways that they're important in the way that we live our lives. So we've very much got the elements of self-care that are around health and well-being, some of those lifestyle choices and the things that we choose to do to hopefully live a healthier lifestyle to prevent some problems that might otherwise arise. And then we've got things that very much around our activities of daily living, so the things that we do on a day-to-day basis to look after ourselves and to make sure that we take good care of ourselves. And then obviously from time to time we're going to have some problems might arise, we might be feeling unwell, we might have some symptoms that we want to deal with, and there's a large number of those things that we can deal with ourselves. We can self-care, and you know, we may very well be able to do that. And then at other times we may have been through some type of episode or some kind of problem has arisen, and we need some opportunities to recover and to rehabilitate from that and to sort of get back our function that we had before. So it's really thinking about those type of concepts, and as obviously very clearly sits within the programme of work that's been going on through NHS England, this approach is really particularly important for people with long-term conditions. And many of you, I'm sure, will have had the great pleasure to hear Professor John Young and his colleagues speaking about the approach now of very much considering frailty as a long-term condition. And so that's why we're really starting to really understand the importance of self-care in the management of frailty and supporting people who are living with frailty to try and have the best quality of life that they can. But sometimes, of course, we may need a little bit of help with this self-care, so we may need supported self-care. So that's where, as health and care professionals or as friends and family, whoever it is that we're relating to, we might be able to assist people to manage their own care. So they might have lots of things that they can do, but they need a little bit of help to do that in order to improve their quality and experience of life. And in order to support people to self-care, what we need are engaged and informed individuals and carers. We need professionals who recognise the central role of the person in their own care and who are committed to partnership working. And we need care systems and services that are organised in a way that will actually enable individuals, carers and professionals all to work together and to be hopefully pursuing the same agenda and not at cross purposes, as I'm sure probably we've all experienced from time to time. In terms of supporting self-care, what is it that we need? What do we need to do, and what are the principles of this approach? And really, it's all about moving from a situation where individuals are feeling that they're recipients of care to a situation in which they're equal partners in care, so that people are empowered to be able to look after themselves and to be able to participate in their own care. And obviously, in order to achieve the types of things that we might want to achieve in self-care, people need to be motivated. That includes both the individuals themselves and the professionals and the carers who are supporting them. We need to understand the emotional and behavioural relationships factors between all of us that will actually support the self-care process. And of course, very importantly, we need to help people to have the capability to do that. To give people the support and the equipment, in some cases technology, equipment, information, to actually be able to develop those skills and to use them to look to self-care more effectively. because the sorts of things that we might be talking about with self-care and the sort of goals and objectives that people might have might vary from, if you like, wanting to maintain doing something. So it may be that, for example, in the case of an older person with frailty, the goals of self-care are very much to say and be able to retain the mobility to maybe walk to the shops. In other cases, it might be about stopping doing something. So somebody might want to stop smoking, or to adopt, you know, to maybe reduce their alcohol intake, or to lose some weight. Or in other cases, it might be about wanting to do something new, or wanting to start doing something differently. So we've very much got to think about what the goals of the self-care are for that individual, and how these principles of empowerment, motivation and capability can support them. And where does this all fit in, really, in the bigger picture? I'm sure a lot of you will have seen this really fantastic document that came out a couple of years ago from the King's Fund called Making Our Health and Care Systems Fit for an Ageing Population. As I say, I'm sure many of you have seen it. If you haven't, I really recommend it. It's a tremendous report. It's available free to download from the King's Fund website. And what it really does is lay out really clearly the 10 components of care for older people that will make our health and care systems fit for our ageing population. And what you can see is that there's a cycle of 9 different components, ranging through from ageing well and staying well, through acute care needs, through discharge needs from hospital, and through to the sort of support that and care that people need towards the end of their lives. And you'll see that the 10th component is very much about integrating those services in order to provide person-centred care. So that's a really, really important set of concepts that really is very much a kind of a map of what we need to do, and should very much be our ambition to work towards this. And the bit that we're really talking about today is these first 3 bits that you can see highlighted on this slide, which is about ageing well and staying well. It's about living well with one or more long-term conditions. And it's about support for people with complex comorbidities and frailty. So this is very much where the self-care agenda fits in, particularly with the bigger picture of how we can offer care and support throughout people's journeys of care in older age and with frailty. So what skills do we need for supported self-care? We need, obviously, at the heart of this, to start with person-centred partnerships. We need to be working very closely with the individuals that we're trying to support, and we need to have a really strong partnership approach with them to try and start addressing some of these issues. Next, we need to be able to communicate effectively, obviously, with those individuals, and we very much need to engage with their family and support networks in order to try and start building the things that we need to do. Once we've got those strong foundations in place, we need to help people to maintain their skills and confidence, and we need to help people support choice and managing risk. This is a really, really important part of supporting older people, because it's very important that we focus on what's important to the individual that we're trying to support, what they want to achieve and what their choices are, and help them to make those a reality. It's very difficult sometimes, because we might feel that the choices that they're making, or that things that are important to them, are a little bit risky, and we might really think that we would rather they did something else. But we must understand that that what we need to do is to support people's choice, to support what they want to do to have their best possible quality of life. And then once we've got those foundations and skills in place, then we can start to help people to do things like deploying assistive technology, and what technology is there that might be able to support people, and how can we signpost people effectively to the wealth of information that's out there that really can help very considerably in a lot of cases. So in order to achieve these ambitions around supported self-care, there's a number of opportunities and components that we're going to talk about now, which are really around the workforce development aspects, and how can we help people across our workforce to be able to work like this in a much more proactive way. And it is quite a big change for a lot of us, because a lot of us who've been certainly working in health and care for a long time, the traditional approach was very much about us giving care to people and us doing things for people, and not necessarily really focusing on such a person-centred approach as we very much want to try and achieve now. And so the first thing that I'm just going to tell you a little bit about is this thing called the Frailty Fulcrum. The Frailty Fulcrum is a model of frailty that I've developed really to try and help, to try and create a common language really that we can share with individuals and carers and professionals to help us talk about frailty, to help us understand frailty, and very much to help give an interpretation of frailty that will be meaningful and relevant to people who are living with the condition and to the people around them, whether that's family, friends, professionals, to think about how we can provide a framework for the holistic assessment of frailty and for some action planning about what can we do to help people. And it's really created in the form of an animation. I'm not going to show you the animation just now. It lasts about 5 minutes, but you can access it through the NHS England website. There's a blog post that's, I think, dated about the 5th of January. If you go to that blog, it's called the Frailty Fulcrum. You can read about the Frailty Fulcrum, and at the bottom there is a link so that you can actually watch the animation. But I'm just going to describe a few of the principles, really, about it for you just now. And the first thing really, as I say, is that it supports this integrated approach to frailty that very much puts the individual themselves at the centre of it and focuses upon their quality of life as the key thing that we're trying to support. And you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, there's a little set of triangles that reflect the icons that you can see on the Fulcrum model. And these represent different domains within somebody's life. And these are domains that are important to all of us. They're important to you and me and to all of us who are talking about this today, but they may be particularly important for people who are living with frailty. And so we can see that we're talking about people's social environment, that's their families, their friends, their communities. We're talking about the physical environment. That may be things as simple as their clothing and footwear, or it may be their home environment, or it may indeed be their wider locality. What are the pavements like outside their house? What are the transport systems like? So it's a very holistic approach to each of these domains, and there's no hard and fast rules. They're just really prompts to help us to think about it. Systems of care are a really important one, and they're important not just because of the care that we might offer to people, but also the way in which we offer that care. And many of you will have seen the tremendous report from National Voices about what's really important to me, and people talking very strongly in that, older people talking very strongly about how important to them the relationships are with the people who give them care, and not just the care they receive, but how they receive it, what that feels like to them, not just the tasks that are completed within that care offer. And then we've got, of course, psychological status. That's a very important thing, anxiety, depression, but also can include emotional things, spiritual things. So again, a very broad definition, but really just a prompt for us to think about it. We've got long-term conditions. We're very obviously familiar with that, whether those are physical health conditions or mental health conditions, and along with those, some of the functional impairments that go with that. So although things like incontinence aren't traditional long-term conditions, within this model, it's quite fine to include them. They are long-term conditions that affect people's health and well-being. So let's think about those and let's talk about those too. And then very much, as I say, we've got acute health events as well. From time to time, acute health events will occur and we need to be able to respond to those. So the idea really is that the model articulates this multidimensional nature of frailty through a series of moving triangles that are balancing at different points along that fulcrum. And the point of perfect balance basically represents the optimal quality of life for that person. And the degrees of imbalance, whether that fulcrum is tipping to one side or the other because of the positioning of those domains, represents a less good quality of life. It basically explains how keeping the balance between all the different things that are going on in our lives becomes more difficult over time. And as we get older, the likelihood of relatively small things causing a bigger imbalance becomes more likely. The model also highlights, and this is quite important for us in our real lives and in the work that we do, it highlights that these changes can occur more quickly for some people than others. So although frailty is related to ageing, it isn't the same thing. There are important differences between those. And some people will become frail at a much younger age than others. And other people who are really at a very advanced age might not be very frail at all. But I think for me, the most important thing about this animation and about this model of frailty is that it's all about presenting and promoting a positive approach to frailty, because what the intention is to point out the opportunities that there are to improve the quality of life of people living with frailty. And so it is all about the empowering of people to exercise choice and control over the care that they receive, and over the fact that even though some of these domains might be quite challenging and people might, for example, have quite a number of long-term conditions, there are still lots of things that we can do within people's lives that will support them and will still improve their quality of life, even though we don't have a magic wand to make them 20 years younger or to take away all their long-term conditions. So as I say, if you do want to look at the Frailty Fulcrum animation, go along to the website. If you've got any comments, it'll be absolutely great to have your feedback. It's a model that we've been working with, and we're really keen to have people's opinions about what it means to them and how you think it might be improved. So this is one element within the training that we've been doing, and I'd also now like to tell you next about something which most people have found quite interesting, and it's certainly been very good fun, which is something called the FrailSIM, which is a virtual reality experience that we've developed to build empathy for people with frailty. So this is a little bit about what it looks like. This is one of our training events that we ran in Nottingham, and you can see that some of the words that people have used to describe this training experience are in the box there above. But this is basically what it looks like. It's a little headset. You've got headphones on so that you can hear the audio that goes with it. And what you can see in those headsets is basically phones. It's done through the smartphone technology, and so the smartphones that we've got just slot into the front of those things. It's a pretty basic system in some ways, but it's actually proved to be really quite powerful in the training. The reason that this idea came about, and the background to what some people might think was a slightly crazy idea at the beginning, but really there's a lot of good evidence that simulation-based medical education simulation is a really powerful tool in medical education. And through active and adult learning theories, there's a lot of evidence to explain why that might be the case, and to show that that can have a bigger impact for some people than some of our more traditional learning styles. Now, obviously, as far as simulation is concerned, there are basically kind of two main approaches. Generally, it's used to simulate the patient for the person who's being trained. So, for example, with mannequins, or maybe with role play where somebody's playing the part of a patient. And you as the health or care professional or the individual undergoing the training is, if you like, playing the part of yourself, but you've got something simulating the part of the individual that you're caring for, to allow you to sort of learn about those interactions and to think about your practice and to develop your skills. But then there's another approach, which is where simulation, which actually allows the practitioners to experience some aspects of that individual situation. And so you can see in the picture here the age simulation suit. Again, some of you might have been involved in using these, and really it was an age simulation suit like this that was the original kind of, if you like, prompted the idea about the virtual reality. What actually happened was that at the emergency department where I was working at the time, we had a very active special interest group for the care of older people. And some of the members of our group had been on a training event where they used one of these age simulation suits. And whilst if you look at the picture, it might look rather cumbersome, and you might think it's a little bit incongruous, and how would that really have an impact as a training tool? They are actually very impactful. And our colleagues who'd been on that training event came back with very glowing reports of the experience, and so we subsequently hired and then actually purchased one of these suits for our training within the department. Now, the slight downside of the suits is that though they were very good at building empathy and explaining that experience, it is an approach that's rather difficult to scale up because to use in large groups, because obviously you've got to get the suit on and off. It takes a bit of time. You can only really do it one at a time. So the idea came about that wouldn't it be nice if we could use virtual reality to create a virtual reality equivalent of that age simulation suit, where we would be able to put the people undergoing the training into that situation of experiencing some of those feelings of older age and frailty. and that will potentially be a more scalable approach. We might be able to use that with bigger groups, and it might also offer opportunities, for example, to change the environment within which you're undergoing that experience of frailty without us necessarily having to put the frailty, the age simulation suit on and sort of go out on tour whilst wearing it. So that was the background really of where the idea came from. And the approach, we've been very fortunate to work with some technology partners who are based in Telford called VRSS. And what they've done for us is they've created a virtual living space. So when you first put the headset on, you will find yourself in this environment, which is the inside of a bungalow. And inside that bungalow, you'll be able to walk around, you'll be able to see and hear things, and there'll be some clues in that bungalow about the person who lives there and their interests and their life. And then what happens is that you turn into the avatar, who is the older person with frailty who lives in that environment. And this is based on a person called Victor, who I'll tell you a little bit more about later on when we come into talking about some of the case study work that we've been doing. But essentially, when you go into the avatar experience, what happens is there are different impairments that are programmed into, we can program into the device. So we've got different visual impairments, we've got different hearing impairments, and we've got different mobility impairments. So what you'll find is once you go into the experience, depending on exactly what we've programmed in for you, you might have tinnitus, you might have mild or severe cataracts, you might have poor hearing, and you might find that you're walking, you can only walk slowly, or indeed you can only walk very slowly or very, very slowly, because the speeds that are programmed into this actually do equate to the gait speed test for frailty. So once you've transitioned into that avatar, what you then have to do is do a few simple tasks over the next few minutes, moving around that environment. For example, you might want to make a cup of tea and take your tablets. And other things might happen whilst you're trying to do those simple tasks. And for example, the phone might ring or the doorbell might go, and then you might have to make some decisions and choices about how you're going to prioritise the things that you do, because actually, because you can't see very well and because you can't move so fast as you used to be able to, you can't actually do all of those things at once, and you've got to choose between the doorbell and the phone or making your cup of tea. And what quite interestingly happens is that when people are going through that experience, you will find that actually it becomes much more difficult to notice the things around you, and that people have had really quite a powerful experience, even though it's it's only a few short minutes that you do the experience, but the type of experience that people have had has really been quite powerful, and we'll talk about the impact of that in just a few minutes. So the learning goals for this, and the ideas that we wanted to convey about is obviously the first thing is this idea of being able to some small extent to walk in the shoes of an older person with frailty, and that will help us to increase our understanding of their situation and to develop greater empathy, so we can understand some of the difficulties that we might be having, that people might be having in. The second thing, which again is very, very important, is to promote observational skills. So obviously many of us will be seeing the people that we're looking after. We might be seeing them at home, we might be seeing them in a family environment, but we need to be observant, and the idea within the virtual reality scenario is that there are some clues in the environment about Victor, about his life, about what might be important to him and some of the challenges that he might be facing on a day-to-day life, in his day-to-day life. And part of the program that we've been using this virtual reality experience in is very much then about, this is very much part of an exercise where part of that is talking through what people have and haven't observed about what's going on in Victor's environment. And as I say, what we do find is that because people are so busy concentrating on trying to do the tasks that they need to do, actually they're not observing things and they're not noticing things about that environment. And I'm sure lots of us can really relate to that in terms of looking after older people, because sometimes when older people are facing increasing challenges with frailty, because of the increased effort that it takes to really do the basic things that they need to do in their lives, some of the other things that they might previously have been quite well on top of, or they might have noticed, maybe things not working properly, the light bulb's gone, or something's not quite working, or maybe the food's a little bit out of date, they're not noticing those things so much because actually they're having to concentrate so hard on doing the basic things in their lives. And the third goal of this training is a slightly different one, but it's very much about helping the professionals that we've been training to actually deploy novel assistive technology to support their own training goals, and thereby mirroring one of the skills for supported self-care. So the idea behind this is that assistive technology can be extremely powerful in supporting patients to self-care. Individuals can find a whole range of opportunities there, and there's a vast array of equipment and technology that is available for people. But what we will often find is that people might be a little bit reluctant to actually use some of this technology, and we might be trying to persuade them that that's a good idea. And they might be a little bit reluctant because they're not familiar with it, or they're a little bit anxious about it. They think they might break it, or is it going to do what they really want it to do? Will they feel stupid because they don't know how it works? Will they get it wrong? So all of these things are things that we might be trying to overcome with an individual that we want to use assistive technology in the scenario of supported self-care. But actually, this is exactly the experience that our health and care professionals are going through with using the virtual reality frailty simulation. And I can certainly speak from personal experience here, because I had never done any kind of virtual reality experience before we started on this program. And when I first had a go at it, I was quite anxious. I was a little bit nervous. I thought I'd probably break it. I thought I'd make myself look stupid. You know, it is quite a challenging feeling. And so it is about supporting the people that we're working with to, again, empathise a little bit with that feeling, but actually to realise that if they can be brave enough to have a go, and if we can support them to have a go, that actually there can be a lot of really good benefits that can come from that. So that's what it's been all about. This is the type of reception that it's had. Within the program that we've been using it at the moment, in fact, it's probably going towards 400 people now have actually experienced this virtual reality training module. And you can see they've come from above 50 different organisations and 40 different roles. So we've got a huge range of people that have actually engaged with this. 93% of these people felt that it was good or excellent in building empathy and helping them to understand people with frailty. You can see that there are some people who, didn't feel it really worked for them, and then there's a very small number of people who didn't really get on with it. And that can be for a couple of reasons. Some people don't like the feeling of actually having it on their face. It makes them feel a little bit claustrophobic, and it just doesn't work for them. And there is a small minority of people, as with any virtual reality experience, who might feel a little bit dizzy and a little bit wobbly with it. But you can see that those numbers in the scale of things have been very, very small, and they are quite similar. We've spoken to other people using virtual reality in training scenarios, particularly to the pharmacy department at Keele University, and they found that they will probably have 1 or 2% of their students who might find it doesn't really work for them and they don't really like it. But again, overwhelmingly, people do find it a really useful technology and really powerful way of learning new things. The other important thing to mention is that for the people in our exercise who if anybody doesn't want to do it or doesn't get on with it or doesn't like it, they won't miss out on any of the training goals as such, because we do this walkthrough exercise at the end where we put the VR scenario up on a big screen, and we look through some of those points around what did people notice, what did people miss. And so everybody's got the chance to have a discussion about that, and it works really well as a group exercise. And again, interestingly, the people that have been engaged with this and the people that have enjoyed it and worked so hard with it have come from a huge range of different staff groups. So you can see on that chart there, I don't need to go through them all, but we've got a really good range of professional backgrounds. You can see that on average, these people had worked for almost 15 years in health and care sector, so they're very experienced professionals, yet they're still finding this a useful exercise. And also, they weren't a group of people who are particularly confident with technology, so part of the program was to look at how familiar and confident people felt with this, and you can see that only about a quarter of those people felt really fully confident with their smartphones. So they weren't a group who particularly rated themselves as being confident with technology. And what you can see on the right-hand side there is that these are some of the words that people have used to describe. We asked people what words they would use to describe it to their colleagues, and people talk about, people have said it was good, it was interesting, it was useful, which is obviously great, but people have also talked very much about it being frustrating, and people use words like disorientating and a little bit frightening, because people did find that actually to be in that environment that they had been in just a few moments before, when they didn't have the kind of avatar experience, and they were just inside that virtual reality environment, if you like, as a person without frailty, then to go into that frailty experience and have those limitations and challenges, people found quite unnerving and quite disorientating, and that was one of the aspects that they found very powerful about the experience. So that's a little bit about the virtual reality, and obviously really interested for anybody who's got questions or wants to discuss that, or particularly keen to hear if anybody's got other experiences, if any of you have had experiences of virtual reality training and how you've found that, and whether you've got any suggestions, because it's very much a work in progress. And then I'm just going to follow on now with just to talk to you about the integrated training approach and the person-centered case studies that we've developed. So really, the training event design principles for this program. So this program was all about integration across Nottinghamshire. It's an ongoing program. We've got more events coming up in the next couple of weeks. And as I say, up until now, we've had about 400 people involved in it. And those people have come from all across the health and care economy and beyond in Nottinghamshire. I'll show you in a minute the range of that. Very much about focus on individuals. We spoke earlier about the importance of putting person-centered partnerships at the centre of this. This is all about putting the individuals that we're trying to care and support at the centre of this, and we've got some individuals who you can see on the picture here. We've got Victor and we've got Nirmala and Baldev, who've helped us because they and their families have worked with us in their sort of capacity as experts from their own experience to really tell us what was important to them and to help us shape the training program that would deliver what they felt was needed for people who were going to help and support them. And then, as we've spoken about a little bit, we've tried to use some innovation and to make it, not only to make it a bit interesting, but also to hopefully to use the modern technology to actually really make it a more powerful training experience for people, to really help them achieve the goals of learning that we set out. So we've spoken already about the Frailty Fulcrum, and we've spoken about the virtual reality, and I'll just talk briefly at the end about the electronic Frailty Toolkit app as well. So we said it was open to everybody. I'm not obviously going to try and go through all of this. You can look at this afterwards if you wish, but you really can see the scale of this. It's been an ambitious project by Health Education England, working in the East Midlands, to really engage across the whole health and care economy. So we've had people from acute trusts, we've had people from community services, domiciliary care, primary care, Age UK, British Red Cross, Fire and Rescue Service, people from housing associations, people from care homes. A really, really tremendous privilege to work with such a range of people and to actually see everybody getting together thinking about this agenda. It's been, for me, quite a unique experience in all my professional life to have the opportunity to work like this, and it's really down to the vision, really, of the Nottinghamshire Let's See, who were kind of bold enough to ask for this, that actually what they wanted was something for everybody. They really wanted to take this on a whole community, sort of, not just a whole health system, but really a whole community approach. And as I say, it's been very powerful because of that. So we have full-day events. The roundtable networking and the multi-agency working have consistently been mentioned by the participants as one of the best things about the day. For me, this is really important because this isn't just about the Let's See thinking that it was a good idea to tackle the training in this way, or the commissioners of the service, or us as the people who responded to that and designed the training events. But this is about the vast range of people who have actually come along, given their time, given their energy and enthusiasm to work together, and they really feel that that's been a powerful thing to do. And I can't really speak highly enough about the people who've actually taken part in all of this and made it such a pleasure to be involved with. Really, I've learned an absolutely massive amount from all the different people who've come together in these programs. But what we have within the day is, if you like, a whole different set of components that make up the day. The planning is quite carefully done in that we know who's coming, we know which organisations, we know which professional backgrounds. So we have teams, basically. They work as multi-agency teams throughout the day on their tables so that people have got the chance to work with people and speak with people that they wouldn't normally work with. So lots of interaction and lots of working together. We have a quiz at the beginning, which is quite good fun, a quiz about frailty, which is just to really set the scene. We do some case exercises through using the Frailty Fulcrum to share some of our own experiences about working with people with frailty. And we have an exercise to look at what's helping and hindering people within the wider system, across the system, what's helping them to support people with frailty to self-care and what's getting in the way. And then we've got some case-based scenarios, which I'll tell you about in a little moment. So that's the components that go up to make up the day. And just to tell you a little bit more about what they look like, the people that I told you about at the heart of all of this, we've got a gentleman called Victor who's worked very closely with us on this programme, and his daughter Kath. And the picture you can see on the top left there is Victor himself, who was very keen to share his own picture and his own name and his own story, and as I say, to tell us what he thought was important, what he really felt that people should know and people should understand. So he shared a lot of information with us about his life and about what's important to him. The case is initially introduced through the virtual reality simulation, which we just discussed, and the beginning of that story is that we're envisaging that to be Victor's home, and Victor to be the person who we're all experiencing walking in his shoes for a few minutes. And then we've got a care planning exercise, which starts with a video which uses actors to portray Victor and his daughter Kath, but it's very much portraying information and the scenario that Victor and Kath have shared with us, and it's supported by lots of images of memorabilia from Victor's life, which he wanted us to put in as part of the programme so that people understand where he was coming from and what his priorities were and what his choices were and why they were important to him and what we could do to help him to achieve that. And then on the other case story, we've got the story of Nirmala and Baldev. Again, you can see some actual pictures of them there in the right-hand side there. And Nirmala and Baldev are in a situation which is really quite common. I'm sure many of you come across for older people, where you've got one older person who's living with frailty, who's also the main carer and supporter for another older person who's living with frailty, and the complexities and challenges that might arise from that. And this particular case story is introduced through a hospital-based MDT role-play exercise. So there's an exercise that people take part in to start to understand Nirmala's current situation, which is that she's in hospital following an acute event. And then we have a care planning exercise, which again starts with an audio-visual presentation. And in this particular case, we've got relatives of Nirmala and Baldev who are telling their story and again sharing with us some images that are important to them. So it is a very, very person-centered approach, and they're very powerful stories that say we can't thank our friends enough for helping us to create this program and to really share with us the things that are so important to them. And as part of the work that we do on this, you can see at the bottom there on this slide, we have these voice-off cards, which are available for both stories, so that we just keep reminding ourselves that we have somebody within the group who will be the voice of Victor or the voice of Nirmala and Baldev, to keep reminding us that that's what it's all about, and it's about what's really important to them and what matters to them and what they want to do, not what we think would be a good idea or would like them to do or think might be important. I'm not really going to labour this, but this is really just to point out that it is a long and intense day. There's a lot to get through, but essentially what we do in the morning is we build up understanding around frailty, then we build up understanding of self-care, and then in the afternoon we take that very person-centered approach with the case studies, and we work together to use those skills and from the morning to do some care planning and to really think about what practical options there are to help to support and enable people with frailty to self-care. The evaluation of this training, I'll just tell you briefly because I'm conscious of the time. The way that we're evaluating the training is, first of all, we're looking at the reach and mix of the participants who actually join the programme. So I think we've hopefully already, I've already explained that there's been a huge range of people from a vast range of backgrounds. And then we have a pre-event questionnaire where people tell us a little bit about their pre-existing knowledge, skills and confidence in the area of supporting people with frailty to self-care. On the day, we have obviously some feedback at the end of the day to let us know how people have gone on in the day, and we've had 92% of people feeling that the training was effective or very effective with respect to the training goals that are set out at the start of the day. And then, obviously, what's more important even than that is, obviously, it's important that everybody comes and enjoys the day and feels that it's been useful at the time, but what's far more important is that as they go away from the day, they've got some goals of what they can do differently, and so we do set goals at the end of the day. And 3 months down the line, we've been following people up to find out how that's been for them since the training, how well they think they've achieved their goals. You can see on the right-hand side there, people are rating themselves quite highly in how they've achieved their goals. But if they've not been able to achieve their goals, what things have got in the way of that, and is there anything that we can do to help? And how do they feel now? What's their confidence in supporting people with frailty to self-care? And obviously you can see in this left-hand side graph that actually people are feeling a lot more confident. They self-rate themselves before the event, and then we ask them to self-rate at the 3-month point, but we don't tell them what score they gave themselves at the start. So it's really pleasing to see that people are feeling more confident. They are feeling empowered themselves to go out there and do this work. Inevitably, there's challenges in a programme of this scale in getting people along to the training. The first thing that we need to do is get them to know about it, and reaching out to over 700 primary care and social care providers is quite a challenge to make sure that people are aware that this training is available. And then obviously they've got to have the time to be able to get along and actually do the training. And that's important because actually, obviously, there are huge capacity issues out there in health and social care, and it can be very difficult for people to have the time to come along. The length and intensity of your day, once people do come along, there's been a few people who found it a little bit too much, that it is a long day, it is a busy day, there's lots of new ideas and lots of new concepts. And so really to overcome or to address some of these issues, we've now got if you like, a range of options available. So as well as the full-day training events, we've also developed some shorter training modules, 2-hour training modules, so people can come along for a morning or an afternoon or over a lunchtime session, and they can come to a raising awareness session so that they will go away understanding a little bit more about frailty and supported self-care. And there's another alternative, which is more about the case-based work. So again, a 2-hour session, which is an option there to come along and do the casework for people who are already quite confident in their knowledge of frailty and supported self-care. Extremely conscious now about the time, but just to finally, the Frailty Toolkit app, as we've mentioned, and those of you who joined if any of you saw the webinar last time, or you can look it up on the website, we also have got a Frailty Toolkit app, which is part of this program and that's been developed as part of the program. It's a web-based application, and you can access it through any smartphone, tablet, laptop, desktop, any internet in any way, shape or form, basically. And it's got lots and lots of materials in there that relate to frailty and supported self-care, relate to the training program, and relate to the skills that people need to work in this area. It looks like apps. It's got a little frailty. Those of you who wonder what that is, that's a little icon that goes with the Frailty Fulcrum. So once you've got access to it, you can click into it whenever you want to on your phone. It's got a search function, so you can look about if you want to know about dementia, or you want to know about mobility, or you want to know about Victor. You can search it in any way you like. So that's quite a practical option if people are actually using it during the course of their daily work to sort of access resources to help people. And what's available in it at the moment, just draw your attention to a couple of things. The concepts and consequences section is a section that tells us a little bit about the background information, some of the background to frailty, and lots of really good documents out there in all sorts of areas, but actually you need to know where to look for them. So the idea has been to bring some of those together. The Learning Zone covers lots of information about frailty. It's got the fulcrum, it's got the domains of frailty, and lots of information about self-care theory and principles. The Enabling Zone contains supported self-care planning templates, which have been developed through the programme with with user groups and advisory panels and with the individuals themselves. And then you can see just probably the main other thing to draw your attention to is directory of resources, which is to allow people to access to find out what's out there, helplines, assistive technology, things like that. And again, you can see the case studies featuring our three experts of Victor, Nimala and Baldev are in there as well. You can click, there are links between the different domains, so if you're reading about Victor's case and you think about something where you think, oh, I'm not quite sure what that was, I don't remember what that principle was, you can click on a link that will take you back to the relevant spot in the learning zone. So there's lots and lots of information in there, and it's proving to be an interesting and useful tool to support the follow-up of the programme. So I'm sorry if that's been a little bit long. There is quite a lot to get through, but I hope it's been interesting for you. And obviously, just like to hand back to our host to host any questions and for any discussion that people would like to have.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dawn. So, Dawn, I've got a couple of thoughts around, I can see the impact on the attendees and the change they make in their behaviours, if you like, and their ways of working, and that's always a great start to making large-scale change. But do you have any, and it might be too early yet, but real data around how people with frailty are changing, how it's changing, you know, the environment for those people? Because I can see what it's meant to get to, but I just wondered whether you've got far enough to see that change. Yeah. And also just to reassure you that two people, I can't remember what it was now, who didn't like simulation, that's pretty good to, you know, have it that low, really, because everybody's got different learning styles, different preferred ways of working, and that's really low to have it only at 2. So, you know, you're making big impacts on that. So I just wanted to reassure you on that one.
Thank you. So yes, so in terms of the impact for people themselves, what we've got now and the phase that we're moving into is that with that study, with that follow-up that we did with the 3-month follow-up with the first group who came through the programme, we had some really lovely examples that we were given of what people had actually been doing in their jobs and how they'd been working differently with people. And what we're aiming to do now is to do try and develop some case studies really around some of those examples, to help share those examples and to help understand what difference ultimately that has made to the individuals, because you're right, it's really, really difficult to try and assess the impact of what this means for the individuals themselves, and obviously over a period of time, because the importance of supporting self-care is that it's a long game, and the benefits that we might see from that might be quite some time down the line, and you do need to keep up that work and that way of working and way of living for quite a long time. So we haven't got any actual data as such, but as I say, we're certainly going to be looking at some of the case studies, and as I say, wanting to bring those in and share them, and hopefully maybe have some more people who individuals who are happy to engage with us, like Victor and Nimala and Baldev has. Although I do have one example of something that's made a direct difference, which is actually a story about Victor, which was that I went. Victor said to me that if anybody, that when we were talking about it, he was very keen to know, obviously, what suggestions people came up with when they were looking at his case and hearing his story. And at one of the early events, somebody suggested singing for the brain for Victor, and Victor wasn't actually at that time engaged with singing for the brain. So I went back and I was telling them about the event and how much people had appreciated the work that he had put into supporting it. And I was telling about singing for the brain, and lo and behold, subsequently Victor has joined his local Singing for the Brain group, and so there has certainly been a direct impact there, and that for me was quite unexpected, unintended consequence of the programme, which was really delightful, to be honest. So.
No, I agree. Our ethnography work that we did, which followed 15 people with long-term conditions and their families, actually affected quite significant change on those individuals just by doing a 4-week diary with them. They reflected on their own behaviours, and it really empowered them to actually make the changes rather than just, you know, be unhappy with the system or how to help us to get it better. They took control themselves. So I think it's huge impact. So just bearing in mind time, I just want to bring Jane in to ask your question, Jane.
Okay, so a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. I'm working on the self-care program that NHS England is just we're startup phase really, and hopefully getting going big time in April. My question is, and this is something we've seen already, the kind of work that you're doing isn't everybody's priority. People are just trying to keep, you know, things together and get the day job done. And although this obviously improves the day, I'm a complete convert already. But how did you get people, you know, did you have people that it wasn't their priority? And if so, how did you kind of win them over?
I think it's a really good point, and I think that's where I suppose there's priority at the sort of, if you like, the organisational level, and obviously what we've had in Nottinghamshire is that this has come from the stakeholders. The reason this programme came about was because they had a big stakeholder event, and this was what the stakeholders in Nottinghamshire decided that they wanted. So obviously there was a good body of people who wanted to be involved, and I suppose, I guess, part of the challenge in a way really is that obviously we've had nearly 400 people through the events. It's been fantastic, but obviously the people that we've seen are the people who've come to the events and have wanted to be there and have engaged with it. And I guess, you know, we're dealing with a selection of people who've selected themselves because they're interested and enthusiastic. And for me, the really big challenge is the people that we don't know about and that we haven't seen. And although in terms of running a training program for us, 400 people feels like quite a lot, in the bigger scheme of the health and care workforce, obviously it isn't such a lot. And I think that you're absolutely right. It's a really big challenge. But in terms of the sort of the people who have been there, we have done this exercise that I think I mentioned around what helps people and what gets in the way in terms of them actually trying to do this. Because you're right, some people, you know, there are some people who feel that they would love to do it, but actually the challenges of actually making it happen because they haven't got the time or they don't feel the resources are available, or they just don't feel confident is quite a big issue. But interestingly, looking at what people felt the really positive and powerful things were, the feedback on what was helping was very much around, in much of the things that people spoke about that were really helping this agenda was so much about individual groups or groups of people or services who were really getting out there and making a difference. So I think if we can, through the programme, help to infuse some people in that way and help us to have out there more people who are enthusiastic, who really want to sort of get hold of this programme of work, and to maybe support and encourage some of their colleagues who may be less confident and feel you know, a little bit more sort of reluctant about it. But that's really the way forward. We can't do that from, you know, from the side of running lots and lots of training programs, but that's really about people on the ground and how they work and how they share and inspire. And we certainly heard some great stories about particular individuals who working in a way that's really inspiring their colleagues on the ground, and how those people are really the people who are really going to make the difference, much more so than you know, sort of training events that we might be running.
Great, thanks.
Brilliant. And I would add, Dawn, go and have a look at Prochester's model of change, and that will help you to know where to put your energies, because it's about, you know, working with those who are energised and enthused, and coercing others to keep moving around the cycle of engagement. And I think that might be helpful, and just make you realise you haven't got to work 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. Bless you. Okay, so I don't think we've, so really just, I'll just give you a second to think about what's your last comment that you're going to leave everybody with, Dawn, to go away from today's session, and do straight away. And just to thank everybody for joining us and staying with us. I'm going to leave the final word with Dawn as to how we can motivate you to go and do something now.
Thanks very much indeed, Bev, and thanks everybody for joining the webinar today. I mean, I think really for me it's about that, the fact that actually it's tremendously enjoyable to do this work, and that actually there's lots and lots of small things that we can all do that will make a difference. And I know that we're all working in quite difficult times, and sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming. You know, there's so many challenges in every direction, but actually there's lots and lots of small things that are within our grasp that actually we can do a little bit differently every single day. And when I think about this program, the thing that really enthuses me is that I think about the people who've been through the program, and I think if all of those people just did one little thing differently for one person a week, that's an awful lot of little different things that are going to make a difference to an awful lot of older people with frailty. And that might be them, their family, their friends, or at work, but I don't think it really matters who it is or where it is. Every little will help, and we can all play a part in that. And it's good for all of us. It's enjoyable for all of us and beneficial for all of us to actually be able to do that. Thank you.
Brilliant. So have a bit of fun with it as well. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely afternoon.